Good morning, good evening, and welcome to the program. My name is Numan, and I'm here with Mubashir and the whole team, and we're talking about innovation. So this is our session 4 on the creative thinking series, and today we're talking to Dr. Mubashir Khanzada, on becoming more creative. And with us is Hamad and Ghazanfar as well. Mubashir, how are you, my friend?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Very good, very good. So this COVID environment is, don't you think, is a perfect environment for becoming more creative, or what do you think about this current environment?
A brilliant question. Actually, crisis begets creativity. You'll find that whenever there is a tumultuous environment, transition happening, and there is a big change, seismic change or event happening, then there is a lot of creativity. We all know about the phrase, necessity is the mother of invention, or maybe invention is the daughter of necessity, whichever way you want to look at it. But basically, when there is a pain in the conventional ways, business as usual ways, the routine ways are not going to help relieve the pain or solve the problem, then people are going to find new ways, and hence creativity fosters. So in any crisis, you're going to see a lot of interesting innovations coming out on the other side.
Good, good. Can you hear me? Can you hear me well?
Yeah.
Okay,
You can
very
hear
good. So here's my problem, and I want to talk about this problem with you today. I am president or a owner of a company who makes ball bearings. And we have been making ball bearings. Our process is very good, but then the COVID hit. And now I'm sitting with $1 million of inventory, the ball bearing inventory in our warehouses, and we're not able to sell this inventory. Okay. And this is happening because of COVID, because there are no more buyers. People don't want to buy it. So I want to talk about this problem, that what can we do in this situation? We have tons of inventory which is sitting, and I cannot sell it, and I have to become more creative to sell this inventory. So tell me about this. What are your thoughts, or how would you solve this issue?
Okay, so basically, it's always helpful to have a problem definition to identify and clarify what the issue is. And you are describing that, we have ended up with a lot of inventory. It could be anything. It could be microwave ovens or CD players or washing machine or chairs or tables, etc. Ball bearings are the devices that have kind of circular spheres inside that allow rotation inside. So it's
So
something that reduces friction. You have a
yeah,
photo of it?
yeah.
Cool.
Let me
Bring it
share.
up. So essentially, what we can do in such a situation is, yeah, here you go, ball
So here's
bearing.
the ball bearings.
$1 million worth of inventory, like lots and lots of ball bearings, extra ball bearings in your warehouse. The key thing is that to think about the problem with the convergent thinking, divergent thinking and convergent thinking process. So basically you start in one way, start thinking about lots and lots of more ideas, go for quantity, not quality. And then on the other side, start converging those lots and lots of ideas for what could be practical and useful ideas. And it's very important that when divergent thinking is being done, to defer judgment. Extremely important, because fresh ideas are like little seedlings. They are fresh. They're not powerful trees with trunks and stuff. And they would not survive if you compare them with other ideas. So the principle there is go for lots of ideas. And we will talk about this in convergent thinking, divergent thinking process in a minute. I think what can happen is, and I will invite other participants in this call to provide some of their thoughts as well. think about the characteristics of the item, the ball bearing, for example. It has a
Characteristics.
shape, it has a shape, characteristics, it has weight, it has certain characteristics, it's reducing friction, it can rotate, it has these shiny little balls. What can you do if you take the balls out? What can you do with the item itself? Because the first thing anybody would look at it and think about is, oh yeah, okay, this would go into tires and wheels of motorcycles and cars and roller skates and those kind of things. This is where typically ball bearings are used. But if we think in terms of not cognitive rigidity, but think in terms of flexibility, then we can think about, can we do other things with it? So before we go further, I mean, others are in this call. Let's ask them, what do you think? Can you solve Noman's problem? He has a lot of these. What should or could be done with these little shiny things? I'm giving you a hint there, little shiny things. You can unmute Azanfar or Hamad if you have any suggestions, ideas, throw it out, whatever comes, gut feeling.
Is my voice is clear for you?
Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes.
Thank you. I tried it to resolve the issue. Thank you for it. To sell this automobile bearing or whatever this is, it's look like that ball bearing. It is. So you can sell in the lockdown. You want to sell it in the Corona lockdown because you have not that supply chain in the market because of lockdown. Is that the question?
The question is that Noman has ended up with $1 million worth of ball bearings in a warehouse. That's a lot of ball bearings, and buyers are not buying. The original buyers have canceled the orders. So what can we do?
Yeah, because of coronavirus, market is disruptions, right?
But it could have
Yes,
been a
yes.
recession.
It
It could
can
be
be
any other
anything.
situation.
Okay, it can be anything. Okay, so you can sell out this by giving some other ideas like the ball bearing can be used in the spinner, so you can sell it.
Yeah, fidget
To
spinners,
kids,
very good.
yeah, fidget spinner,
Yeah.
because kids are always free, schools are closed, so they can use it and play with it.
What else?
So
Fidget spinner, good idea. Yeah,
That's a
that's
good
good.
yeah,
idea.
and uh, we can use it in some toys, other toys.
Other toys, okay, or make toys from it.
Yeah,
Some new
from
kind
it.
of toys.
Mhm.
Good idea, thinking. Yeah, good.
And
Hamad?
yeah, thank you.
No,
That's it.
you're still thinking about ideas. I'm going to come back to you, but
Oh,
you're
okay,
not
okay.
off the hook. Keep on thinking, but let's add Hamad into it. Ideas, Hamad?
I think because of the virus, there is a lot of problem with supply and demand. So places where, first of all, like if you're just selling it in America and you don't need it there, there are a lot of other countries where there is a need for this and they can't get hold of them because of the factories and everything are stopped.
Okay,
So
but
what you can
think
do
of
is
new ways. So imagine that demand is for some reason not there. What else can be done? What else new?
a new application or something like that.
Yeah, new ideas, new application, new uses.
You can start making furniture moving things with it, because when you've got big, so for example, you've got cupboards and everything. If you want to move a cupboard or something, you have to pick it up and it's very heavy. So but if you've got something small like ball bearings, or if you can make a device which has ball bearings and you just get the cupboard up from one side, put it underneath it, and then get it on the other side, and then you can move it like that.
And if you could change its shape in any way, its characteristics, it has weight. Can we use it as something that requires some weight? How about a ball bearing paperweight?
That would roll off, yeah?
No, you're putting it, that's a good point. Yeah, ball bearing paperweight that can roll off. If you're putting it in a wheel style, then it will. Good thinking. I was thinking more in that way, but yeah, there's a good idea of putting it that way. Could use actually, the ball bearing for home exercise, couldn't you? Put it down, put your
You can,
board on it, and then stand on it and try to balance. And then, hey ho, you might become a ballerina or a ballet dancer by the end of your
You-
COVID lockdown, right?
you can use it for stress relief as well, because ball bearings are nice and frictionless
Throwing
and
it
everything.
at
If they
people
got
who
wet,
are giving you stress, hitting them
well,
with it.
that's one application. But you can also in the hands and everything. People like to when they're stressed, they have a ball thing and they move it like a fidgeter, but you with the actual ball bearings. You don't need to change anything. You just have two of them in your hand and
Make sure that it doesn't get stuck on your finger, and then you have to chop the finger off. Or give it to your enemy
yeah.
so you can. Okay, what else? Good ideas. Noman, do you have any suggestions or ideas yourself?
No, so I love what Hamad and Ghazanfar said. So I would like the first thing, like you suggested, I would write down the item characteristics, that what this item can do, and what are the different components of this item. Okay, it has balls, it has rings, it can rotate. Okay, it can. So these are the things that are coming to my mind first. And then what I would think is that what can I change, or how can I the components of this ball bearing, how can I maybe reuse or readjust or reutilize these components. Okay, and this is happening everywhere in businesses, where we are seeing that the businesses are not making the revenues, the businesses are not making margins, um, businesses are not growing at this time. So everybody is stuck with this ball bearing problem, where they're trying to understand. For example, restaurants are closed. Okay, but what are the different components of the restaurant? There is food, there is chef, there is tables, there's a lot of these components. So one way people are doing is they are doing home delivery. Okay, maybe one of their waiters is doing home deliveries because that person cannot serve. So that's where we need to think different. And this example of ball bearing is just maybe pushing us. And so number one, we need to list the characteristics of the business or the product. Okay, then what can we change, and what are the new uses? So three things: what are the characteristics, what can we change, and what are the new uses? And this is how I would frame this problem to anyone, this ball bearing problem. And so but I want to know maybe your thoughts about this, because I look up to you from your expertise, and I see a big smile on you. Go, tell
Well,
us.
I don't know about expertise, but I do have a very wandering mind, a divergent thinking mind. I think we did a slide some time ago, if that's available. So it's a picture paints 1,000 words. We can very quickly see some of the suggestions or ideas about ball bearings that could be utilized. So, on top, you can see bicycle, motorcycle, roller skate, fidget spinner is there. How about a yo-yo spinner? Like, the yo-yo, it goes up and down. Uh, Using it as an item of jewelry, as a locket. I mean, engineering girl might like it, or a man, I don't know. It can be a medallion. You can think about taking out the balls from it, and then what can we do with it? Can they be combined into other shapes or forms, or do something else with them? Can you set them up so, in the kitchen you can solve the storage space problem, as the examples in the top left corner are showing, where you have some sort of a push in push out kind of drawer mechanism, where there are hanging facility for pots and pans. And so basically it has its shape, it has weight, you can color it something differently, it has balls, take the balls out, combine them in a new format, use them. It has rings, you can set the rings up and use the rings for some other purposes. Puzzles, you have the balls that are going through different wooden puzzles or other kind of puzzles. And size as well. I mean, if it is small, then it can go into likes of fidget spinners or these lockets and stuff. If you think about making it really, really big, then what can you do? So can we go to the next slide? Because I think there was this interesting thing that if you have some really big ball bearings, then you can actually put them in the foundation of buildings. That is how they actually create buildings to protect them against earthquakes and some other forces of nature, maybe also hurricanes and stuff. You can make some really intricate machine, a clockwork, or some sort of a big ball contraption, put the ball bearing on the top, and it just goes, the ball goes all the way around, and it would be fascinating toy for adults or children, etc. The key point is we are not limited by what it is right now, but rather what it can be. And if we have a mindset of thinking about what else, what can we change, what are its characteristics. Last time when we were having the example of brick and using brick, there was this other interesting aspect that other than the brick's own shape and using it for certain kind of things, you could have used the brick and its specific density and its ability to absorb heat for a kind of a heat dissipation device. So what can this ball bearing's physical characteristics of thermal conductivity or electrical conductivity or insulation could help you achieve? One can go with many different ideas, and then those ideas would beget other ideas. And that is the key thing about the divergent thinking, convergent thinking philosophy. Numan, you have anything to think about or talk about divergence and convergence thinking process?
No, I think what I understand from the divergent and convergent thinking is, first, when you're trying to solve the issue, like we've been talking and you have been preaching about this, is about the quantity. It's divergent thinking, start to think about different ideas. And in that process, to me, is I think the quantity is important. And then through some experimentation or through different ways of working, you converge that to maybe a focused idea. And then that is something that you need to pursue. But I like to hear from you as well, that what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, so I think you have mentioned this very important aspect. Basically, underpinning the creative thinking process is one of these processes where we need to open up first. This is the divergent thinking, going in different directions, thinking of more ideas. And therefore, there are like 4 key principles in this stage, in divergent thinking stage. You need to have fluency. How fast can you generate ideas? So people who are very creative, they tend to have this ability to generate more ideas in the same amount of time, and go forward with it. And then you have flexibility, where the ideas can be changed, and ideas get new ideas. So you get one idea, and then that jumps on to a few hops, and then there is another idea, and then there is another idea. So fluency with the speed of ideas, flexibility, many different ideas coming in and out from the idea, and then the novelty factor, how original the idea is or different the idea is from what others may think about. So if we look at ball bearing, for example, then a lot of people think, okay, yeah, put it into some sort of a wheel, or etc. But can we use it as a jewelry item? Can we use it for its components and combine it in other different forms and shapes and stuff? So novelty and different thinking process from what currently is most popular. And extremely important while all of these are happening is to defer judgment, because we, the human beings, have a tendency to try to kind of think in terms of, okay, this is good, but what are the downsides at the same time? There's a time for that judgment process in the convergent side. But when we are doing the divergent side, defer judgment, don't judge the ideas. If it sounds crazy, like a friend here just said that, well, use it as a paperweight and it will roll off. Yeah, fantastic. So that gave the idea that, okay, you can put it like this and then put another board on it and you can balance on it in the lockdown and become a ballerina. Great, like, improve your balance. So ideas beget ideas. Don't reject any idea in there. Defer judgment, go for novelty, go for quantity and association of different ideas. And that then allows you would end up with many different ideas, some really new ideas, wild ideas, wacky ideas, strange and weird ideas, but all of them get listed. And from there, we start the convergent thinking process. And convergence is essentially nothing else but finding out which ideas can work. I'm reminded of the example of Bob Hope, the comedian who had a number of team members who used to write jokes for him. And the process for convergence for him was that he would read those jokes and see which ones made him laugh. So he would cross all the others that didn't make him laugh. And then he would read those jokes again that made him laugh and see which ones made him laugh the second time. And he will reject all the ones that didn't make him laugh the second time. And he will do it the third time. So essentially your convergence process is where you are going to test the assumptions and find out which of the things that you thought would be interesting, strange, wacky, weird, or plain simple, whichever of those ideas are going to work in reality. And then you come up with a few of those that are essentially able to work through. And this whole creative thinking process has like 5 or 6 steps. Each time we start, like here we did in this example, there is a problem statement. And I think Ghazanfar in this call did a brilliant, really good thing of clarifying the problem first. It's very, very important to have this understanding of what the problem actually is. There was an interview with Einstein, and the reporter wanted to understand Einstein's creative thinking process, or his thinking process. So he said that, if there was a problem and you, Einstein, had 60 minutes to solve it, 1 hour to solve it, how would you go about it? I wanted to know what are the steps that Einstein, a person like him, would do. And Einstein, without breaking a breath or without any delay, said, for the first 55 minutes, I will define the problem. I will work on the problem. And only in the last 5 minutes, I will solve it. I'll spend that time in solving it. Because it's well-known axiom that a problem well-defined is problem half solved. And if any of you here are fans of Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, there are kind of 2 very interesting parts in there. One about start with the end in mind. So you can actually visualize what the end is going to look like when you are going through the problem solution combination to find out what the end is going to look like. And the 7th habit, which circles around all of his first 6 habits, is sharpen the saw. So you actually work on the problem, sharpen your saw first before you start attacking a tree and try to cut it. So when you do cut the tree, your tools are in place, and the problem is half solved because you identified it very well. And that's first part. Then we do the ideate part. Think of all these ideas. We are talking about convergent, the divergent thinking. That's ideating, exploring, setting up prototypes, and experimenting and finding out what works and what doesn't. And from there, prototypes and these experiments need to be externally validated. It's not going to count if your mother says, "Oh dear, this is brilliant. I love your brilliant rocket," or whatever you have built. No, that doesn't count. It has to be somebody else that isn't a blood relative and is not an employee, and you don't owe them any money or they don't owe you any money, somebody external, but you get the direct feedback from them. So yeah, idea generation process, improving it through the divergent thinking and then the convergent thinking process helps create more ideas.
Fantastic. The dilemma that we have right now is that the businesses are disrupted. So what we need is, number one, is the business model innovation. In my mind, that's the biggest challenge that we are facing right now, is the technology innovation, the product innovation is maybe the next step. But first is, what is the business gonna look like? How are we gonna sell it? How are we gonna do it? How are we gonna make revenue? That's the first thing. A lot of times we just do technology innovation for the sake of technology without looking at the business innovation. But I think the dialogue that we're having, I love this idea. So in terms of maybe when we are presented a problem, so what the three things that we are discussing is, number one, we need to understand what are the characteristics of the existing business. So that is so important for us to understand what are the characteristics, what is the purpose, what is the vision of the business, who are the people, what are the exciting opportunities. So we need to understand the different components of the business. Then we need to know that we need to understand what can we change. So what can we change? What are the things in that recipe we can change? If we have people who are highly technology focused, and the problem that we are working on is an old problem, let's bring maybe a new problem or a new opportunity. And then number three is, what are the new use cases that we can find? So I think that presents a good three-step process to redesigning a business. And then from there, like you're saying, that we go to this divergent and convergent thinking. And then you talk about a few items here. One is the fluency of the idea, speed, flexibility of the idea. Okay, we need to be flexible in this phase, in the divergent phase. Novelty of the idea is very fundamental. So we need to think about, is that a new idea? Number four is deferred judgment, and then the association of the idea. So this is what I'm seeing as a recipe in the divergent phase. And then on the convergent side, when we converge these ideas, we need to test our assumptions. And we don't want to talk to our blood relative, right, Dr. Mo? That we need to ask some external people that is this valid or not. We need to go out in the market. And then from there, we need to focus into maybe a one or few ideas. And then we need to go move forward in that. So I think that is maybe a great maybe insight that that are being provided. But let me ask you this. So this is a process that we're seeing. Give me some real life examples where this process has worked, or you have seen it work.
I think there are brilliant examples all along, and people do it intuitively as well. I think I read somewhere that Ernest Hemingway, the famous author, used to have like sometimes 30, 40, 50 different titles for his books. And then he would go through them and find out the ones that would work the best. He had multiple different endings for his stories, etc. So basically starting with many in the process of creating ideas, and then associating them, and then coming back and converging onto the ones that work is kind of well known, and many people do this. And in fact, the important part here is, and we spoke about it, that defer judgment. In the divergent phase, you don't do any judgment, but in the convergent phase, it's all about judgment. It's all about finding out how it's going to work. In fact, if you want to kill an idea very quickly, if you want to kill an idea, the moment somebody gives you a new idea, ask them why or who is going to do it, when it will happen, where the money will come. Ask those questions for which nobody has answers yet, because the idea is very nascent at this stage. But when we are in the convergence phase, when we are converging ideas, then you ask these 5 W's and 1 H, 5W, 1 H. Why are we doing it? Who is going to buy it, or who it is for? What would happen, or what's the solution? What's the idea about? When would it work, or in what conditions, and when would it be ready, etc. Time-related questions. And where would it be most useful? So it's a geographic or some sort of a customer segment-related questions, kind of things. And finally, the 1H is how it would all work. And these kind of things then are convergent, and then they result in sort of sifting through the ideas and coming up with the ones that can actually be delivered. But before we go forward, I'm reminded of one other thing which is kind of underpinning this whole divergent convergent thinking, which is mindset. And if you remember, Noman, when we started our series that many weeks and months ago, we had full sessions on mindset process as well. Sometimes in my workshops, I give people some sort of a problem, and then I give them a challenge that come up with your 3 best, most innovative ideas about this challenge, right? 3 most innovative ideas. What is really interesting is that when you see how people go about it, some people would think, and then they would write the 3 best ideas they have thought about, and then they will stop, even though I'm giving them more time. So the big reveal at the end of this exercise usually is, how do you know that these are your 3 best ideas? Because you stopped at 3 ideas, you didn't keep on generating. And you typically find that creative people, innovative people, create more ideas as they go along. In fact, after the first 4 or 5 ideas, that's where newer, more breakthrough ideas start to come up, right? So if we set it up as an exercise, you can very quickly see who are more creative people, because they wouldn't stop at 3. And also there is no way of knowing these are the 3 most innovative, because for it to be most innovative, you should have carried on until you could expand it in all available time, and then look at the ideas that are most innovative. Anyway, that was something that I thought would be useful, and it links back to this mindset question as well.
Right, right. In our previous episodes, we talked about the Dyson story.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
So, Mubashir, in the Dyson story, that what were some key learnings that you want to maybe bring back in this session that are connected to this becoming more creative, this divergent and convergent thinking?
Dyson worked on, if I remember correctly, something like 5,127 prototypes. That's a huge number of prototypes. And that's why his vacuum cleaner had a number of different innovations. It's the first time anybody saw a flexible hose that you could actually detach, and rather than taking the whole vacuum cleaner up the stairs, you could just use the hose for cleaning up the stairs. Massively beneficial for people with back pain, or maybe people who don't have the hand strength to carry up and down a heavy vacuum cleaner. And he invented this. There are a number of different small things, and some of them he patented, others he didn't. But the thing is, he was a divergent thinking in the first phase, and then converged these ideas into the final outcome and final output. And that helped him, because then he created a number of other innovations, his washing machine and his hair straightener or curlier thing, which uses ultrasonics, his air multiplier. It's a fan without any blades. You can put your hand through. It's really magical. I mean, the first time you see it, it's like, where is the air coming from? It's the motor. And that's where this thinking helps, because he's thinking in terms of motors and batteries and all of these things, and more efficient motor can go in the base of the unit, and it can push the air, and then there are jet nozzles, and etc. Main thing is thinking in terms of any issue. Don't stop at the first few ideas that you receive. Think in terms of how what else can happen. And once you have once you think that you have come up with all the possible ideas, that is where, when you push forward new ideas, breakthrough ideas, new suggestions start to emerge. Because the first few, maybe first 3, 5, 8 ideas are the ones that are what everybody else would think as well, which are what we know about in our surroundings, what we are aware of. But once we think more beyond those ideas, we start to break new grounds. We start to go into new directions.
Right. No, I think this is profound. But I want to circle back with Hamad and Gazanfer about their learnings, or what is coming to your mind in the work that you're doing or the business that you're trying to create right now. Hamad, go ahead, please.
I had a very good, sorry, I had a very good idea about the ball bearing thing. I was just keeping it up. One was that I think it was in the first lecture that Mubashir said that children up to the age of 4 or 5 have like genius level creativity and everything. So an excellent thing would be to give some ball bearings to kids and say ask them what they are. I don't tell them that they're used in tires or something like that, because if they don't know what it is, and ask them to tell you what it is or what they can do you're going to get some excellent ideas from them.
Right. Don't make sense. Makes a lot of sense.
Because they will be thinking out of the box. We know what ball bearings are, so we're going to try to fix that idea, or it's like you've got trying to fit a circle into a square or something like that, or trying to fit a square into a circle. So we're going to try to mold it in what we think to it. But if you give it to someone who doesn't know what it is and ask them what they think it is, you're going to have some very out of the box ideas and replies.
Right. And just this, the point that you're highlighting here, Hamad, I think is a very important point. I think in the idea generation phase, if you have the same type of people in the team who are generating ideas, they will come up with the same ideas that they've always come up with. So the diversity of the team, having some younger people, even non-experienced people, unexperienced people who are not exposed to these issues, I think is a great example of building this team. Because what do? Okay, when we do this brainstorming, we bring like the same people like we have in the companies, and we say, okay, we're gonna bring like our most experienced people in this, and these people are gonna generate a lot of ideas, but they can't, because they are in a certain environment. And then your analogy about having this young child is I think is really a bright idea, to diversify your team, in which somebody who's just maybe starting the job or something. And the companies are doing this right now. We're seeing that companies like Google or Facebook, or some of the maybe more innovative companies, they are valuing the diversity and the inclusion of different people in this idea generation. So great idea, Hamad. Gazanfer, what do you think?
Actually, I am trying to understand this convergent divergent, because the ideas and divergent and convergent is using when you want to transform something to another thing. Like you already have a ball bearing that is a use, it has an actual use. Why you want it to convert into some other thing? The reason that you are failed to sell it is if it is the only reason, or it is like you wanted to make something but it is not like that you wanted it to make. So in that case you actually need a divergent and convergent to transform your product or your item to some other thing. right? So in
Right.
that case, you can make ideas, or you can make your divergent convergent process to transforming that thing. But in our life, in our professional profession, I guess that should be the second thought. It should not be your first thought that okay, let's go to make a product. If it will not work, then it may become some other thing. So that is actually the failure thought, in my opinion.
It's actually a good point. Can I
Hmm.
take that, Noman, for a second?
Yeah, yeah,
Sure.
please, please.
So
Dr.
what
Mo.
you're saying, Zanfar, is actually very valid and good point. And both are correct. So there are examples where people started with something and accidentally came up with something different. So 3M made this post-it note which had a very weak glue. Well, post-it note came later. They made a glue and it wasn't very strong, but it was very suitable for post-it notes, and that became $1 billion industry. And Pfizer was experimenting about a drug for hypertension, and that resulted in a separate byproduct, which then became $1 billion product, and we know it as Viagra. And there are other products. Penicillin, for example, was an accidental discovery. But what you are talking about is that when there is these are examples where a product already existed. What if it is not in existence at the moment and we are starting to think about it? So that is a really useful position in place, because you have a fully open carte blanche. There are less restrictions of what you have ended up with. Like, you have $1 million of ball bearings, then you have ended up with, and that's a constraint. But the rules still apply. So if we wanted to go about solving a solution, a problem, and in the world of IT and software, for example, we wanted to create a solution. I am giving this example because I know some of my friends' backgrounds here are in this area. The key thing is that instead of jumping at the very first approach, we do divergent thinking and think about a number of different approaches to solve the same problem or to build that software. We think in terms of many different ways about how we can do it differently, different solutions, platforms, libraries, infrastructure, at different stages of engagement with the customer, etc. And you know your field better than anybody else and your domain knowledge. But by incorporating or inputting these additional external questions to force your brain to not go down the path of least resistance. Electrical engineers or otherwise, you would know that electricity follows the path of least resistance and goes straight from here to there. But that's not where creative thinking thrives. For creative thinking, we need to train our brain to resist the path of least resistance and jump to the conclusion or solution immediately and start working on it. We should step back, think about it, and maybe generate at least, train our brain to think about it in at least 3 or 4 different ways, more if possible. But coming up with an idea uh, that's not the first idea, but there are many different options that were considered, and then we are choosing the best one from it. That would be a good way of looking at it. Uh, but sometimes it's also very useful to be sensitive and think about what happens, because I mean, in the past we have seen this as examples of 3M post-it notes, or microwave ovens. They are in a lot of households. It was an accidental invention. The researcher was working on some other stuff, and then he realized that the chocolate that he had in his pocket had melted. And that's a very useful thing for a creative person to have, which is curiosity. Thinking, this is interesting. That's unexpected. Why did this happen? Rather than just throwing it out. We use the example, I can't remember if we have gone through in detail or not, but Alexander Fleming, the guy who invented or discovered penicillin, if he had thrown away those petri dishes which were contaminated from the mold that had flown in from the window, we would not have saved hundreds of thousands of lives from penicillin as a antibacterial medicine. But he realized there was something strange happening, and instead of throwing it that it's contaminated, he started looking into it. Have to have curiosity to ask the question, why is this happening? Sometimes that happens, but sometimes you design your work habit that way, that if a problem is presented or given, you start asking lots more questions and try to come up with 3, 4, 5 different ways of solving the problem.
Excellent points, Mubashir. And I think what a great way to end the program with these insights. So no, again, I'm thankful for you and our participants and all the people who are watching, and the people who are going to watch this program on our social media channels. So we'll be back with more programs, and stay safe and stay healthy. Take it easy. And with
Before
this,
you go,
yes,
before
go
you
ahead.
go, can I just say, I put my head with a lot of effort into the light bulb moment. Ta-da! See, you can have a light bulb moment and suddenly idea comes up.
Right. No, thank you. Thank you, Mubashir. Thank you, Hamad. And thank you, Ghazan, for God bless you. And then we'll
Thank
talk
you.
to you soon. Thank you.
All right. Take
Bye.
care.